Is the faux vintage diver trend behind us? Maybe. We've got 3 divers with old school roots that take a firm step into the present. We've also got some colorful chronographs, and it wouldn't be a Week in Watches without a new collaboration. This is a Week in Watches, episode 64, our weekly look back at the people, watches, and stories from the industry. My name is Blake Bettner. I'm the managing editor of Worn & Wound. I'll be your host this week. Let's dive in. We're starting things off with a new watch from Tudor. This is a new Pelagos, a new FXD Pelagos. This is a watch that takes inspiration from old school Tudor divers that were issued to members of the US Navy. This takes a black dial and a black bezel and puts it into the beloved FXD frame. That's the fixed lug titanium case FXD. We've seen this in Marine Nationale form, we've seen it in Red Bull Alinghi Racing form, and now, well, there is no collaboration. It's just inspired by that heritage. This is not an old school throwback diver though. This is a fully modern diver, and it follows in the same steps as the Marine Nationale that we saw before it. It still gets a fully indexed bezel, but this time it counts elapsed time, and it only turns one direction. It also gets that red bit of text on the dial, just like the Pelagos 39, and it is modern through and through. It uses the same 42mm case that is 12.75mm thick. It wears just as well as the Marine Nationale, and it uses Tudor's own COSC certified 5602 automatic movement. Really love this watch. I had a chance to go diving with it down in Florida. I've got much more of my thoughts on that watch and the experience as a whole now live on Worn & Wound. Next up, we're moving to a new diver from Oris. This is a diving chronograph. Love a good diving chronograph. This is a Diver 65. They're kind of old school diver platform. They brought a chronograph into it. It's not the first time they've done this. This is the first time that they're doing it in a 40mm case though. And this ditches the yellowish lume, uses a black dial with bright white markers, and I think it works really well in this platform. It's still using the Sellita SW500 automatic movement. It's 15.4mm in thickness, including the domed crystal, and it's a steel case with a steel bezel. This pricing starts at $4,200 on a strap and $4,400 on the steel bracelet. I think this design works really well, and I like it when the Diver 65 is kind of brought into a full modern guise like this. There's no two-tone, there's no yellow lume, it's just stark black and white, and it works really well. This is a great design from Oris. To commemorate 10 years of American design and manufacturing, Shinola Detroit is proud to share this video that reveals the company and its employees as a team that can carve a distinct pathway forward with their own sense of, as they say, timeless American design. This cinematic video gives an insider glimpse of their watchmakers assembling timepieces, soaring views of the Detroit headquarters, and shares perspective on the past decade as well as Shinola's aims for the future. Learn more about Shinola's timeless American design, their latest watch and apparel releases at the link below.
How do you make an icon? Simple answer is, you don't. You just make something for the right reasons. Asking yourself, would you use it? Will it last? Is there any way to make it better? You steer clear of fads and trends and the latest. Building what you love in the way you believe in. And if you do all that, the things you make will find their place. So what do you call that? We call it Shinola.
And next up, Seiko goes back to their 62 MAS platform with a new trio of Prospex divers. This is the SPB 419, 421, and 423. And their inspiration is taken from US diving locales. The cold Great Lakes that surround Michigan, and the cold waters around the Alaskan glaciers as well. The 419 takes its inspiration from the cold waters around Michigan. This gets an ice blue dial that fades to a slightly darker tone at the edge, and a black bezel. The 421 gets an even darker blue dial with a dark blue bezel that also has a subtle fade from light to dark from top to bottom. Really beautiful here. And finally, the SPB 423 uses a cool gray tone. Those last two are the Alaskan glacier water inspired ones. All 3 of these get a 3D pressed pattern into the dial that kind of evokes a slightly frozen bit of water. Now this is a platform that we are well familiar with. It uses a 6R35 movement. It is 40.5mm in diameter. This has the kind of classic skin diver case we have spoken at length about here at Worn & Wound, so we'll leave a link to some of that, including our in-depth reviews of these watches down below. I love seeing them still iterating on these watches and giving a nod to some US locations in the process. All three of these watches are priced at $1,250 and are available now from Seiko. Stepping away from dive watches for a moment, we have a new watch from Ferrer. This is a Ferrer chronograph called the Chrono Contempo. These are two chronographs that are based on famous streets in London, the Chalcot and the Portobello. I think that's how you say those. Apologies to my English friends watching. These are 38.5 millimeter chronographs that measure 13.4 millimeters in thickness. They are using a hand-wound Sellita SW510M. The case here is really interesting. It's a ski slope lug that incorporates into the shape of the profile very neatly. Each of them use a 12-hour bidirectional bezel. The Chalcot uses a big eye layout with a contrasting register. This gets a pastel, teal, navy, white colorway that comes together really beautifully. It's a take on some of the flats on Chalcot, Street, Avenue, Boulevard. And the Portobello gets a black grid pattern dial, a chocolate bar pattern dial they call it, and an orangina yellow bezel. This comes together way better than I probably just described it. Both of these kind of follow in the classic Ferrer design language of pairing colors that you think might not go so well together in a beautiful way. We both use their really thoughtfully considered typefaces as well. These are Ferrer watches through and through. So if you like what you've seen from them in the past, you'll probably really enjoy these watches. And now a quick note to mention that the M.A.D 1 watch that is not an MB&F, is associated with the M.A.D gallery run by MB&F, is getting a new version of its M.A.D 1 watch with a green colorway. If you were able to enter the raffle for that, good luck in landing one. And finally, we have a collaboration from our friends at Fratello and Minase, a Japanese brand that we're quite fond of around here. This is not the first time that these two brands have worked together. You'll recall last year they did the M3 Very Peri. This is the M3 Nori. This uses a lovely, subtle textured dial that is hand finished, that is inspired by Japanese seaweed. And this is one that's going to take on a new complexion at pretty much every angle and every light. This uses a 39 millimeter cushion case that is only 10.5 millimeters thick. This watch also welcomes a bit of orange on the tip of the seconds hand, which is a nod to the heritage of Fratello, which is based in the Netherlands. This watch is really all about the small details, and all of them seem to be bang on here. This is a limited edition watch that's priced at 2,470 euros. You can find out more about this watch at Worn and Wound and at Fratello Watches. And that is episode 64 of A Week in Watches. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we leave, a quick shout out to the top comment from last video, all nicks already taken, asking for timestamps and chapters in the videos, which, as you can see, we've implemented right here. Thank you so much for your suggestion. If you have any other thoughts or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Be sure to throw them in the comments down below. As usual, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to leave a like and share. It helps us out a lot. And until next time, take care.